Hey everyone, Mac Gardner here, certified financial planner and host of Motivate Your Money. I'm here with the one, the only, the incomparable Jamie Hopkins. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us on this three pointers project. Please let everyone know who you are, what you're all about, brother.
Hey Mac, thanks for having me on. And yeah, I guess who I am, right? That's a complex question, but a couple different things. Usually, people want to hear about like what you do or something. But father of three, and I know right before we just started recording this, I've also got my dog Baxter, so I was walking him, and sometimes he makes guest appearances on these. And yeah, I live outside Philadelphia. I teach. I'm a partner at a company called Carson Group, so a RIA across the country. Also a certified financial planner, attorney, MBA, among a couple other things, and a PhD dropout. So that's probably the most important. When I have quit one thing in my life.
You need the fold out card, Jamie. You need the one that just
Uh-huh.
folds out and just all the other stuff after your name. So,
Yeah.
Jamie, known you for years, you are an awesome voice for the financial services industry, for financial education, financial wellness, and so when we are talking about motivating your money, it's about the motivation and the things that really go behind the decisions that we make. And I like to say there's a top three for everything in life,
Hmm.
right? There's a top three for sodas, there's a top three for cars, there's a top three for cereals. And so I was looking at, okay, what would be the top three pieces, what I call motivational money messages for folks like yourself that you've either give to clients, that you know, live with yourself over the years. So can you share with us what your top three motivational money messages would be?
Absolutely. And I'll start with out of the top three, kind of the end one, and we'll work our way back. And it's a phrase that I actually have a book on this too, and have worked on it for our company with our messaging, but it's about find your freedom. And that's where it all starts, which is, that financial freedom. What does that mean to you? And you kind of have to go back probably to your why and what's driving you, because financial decisions, if made in silos and without context, are kind of meaningless. Like I want to save $2 million, and you've got this specific number, but why? Right? Like, why does it even matter? So you really should start with, what does being free mean to you? And that's a really beautiful way to ask it. And it's something that we've learned recently is, like, what does retirement means? A tougher one. Like, there's all these things, but kind of everyone gets this notion of what being free means to them. So that's one, like, define your financial freedom. I think that's incredibly important. Walking back from that, and I just hit the other one, is for most people, some sense of this retirement concept is really important.
Mhm.
And the one thing that's changed with me about retirement was I used to see it as this very static at 65 to 95, 30-year time period that all academics run their models off of. And reality is, like, retirement isn't really that. So we've had to redefine that a bit too. I've used a term rewirement, which means change the way we
Ooh.
think about retirement. And what I think retirement is better today suited as is this work optional time period. So what
Mm.
would you do with life if work becomes optional? That's a different question. And for most people, their financial freedom evolves around that. So
Mhm.
I think defining what retirement means and then how you're going to spend in retirement. That's one of the ones that'll probably be a little different than other people that when you ask them this is we get told forever save, not spend.
Yeah.
But the toughest part about our financial lives is actually going to be that spending part. So to me, learning how to spend. So even if you take a year off work or 6 months at some point and you learn how to spend off of a fixed income or a savings portfolio, to me, I think is really important. I actually have started to tell people while you're working, try for a year, maybe spend down investable assets and you're still saving in them. So it's kind of
Mhm.
just a loop, but actually like experience the distributions, right? Versus just the savings part to kind of test drive. It doesn't have to be all of your money. You could decide to do it for 15, 20%, but actually have that spending from a portfolio experience before we get to retirement. And then I think the last one to me is debt management, and that's important to me. When I
Mm.
finished up law school, I had about $200,000 in loans. Right, I was
Only, Jay?
yeah,
Only? I
only
mean,
yeah. Look, with inflation nowadays, it would have been a lot higher. But
wow.
I had about $200,000 in loans, and I was then looking at other decisions. I was looking at MBA at Warden, and that was going to be like another 200,000,
Yeah.
and I couldn't stomach it. Right, like I looked at that, like there's benefits, but I just couldn't. And so then it was making different life decisions based off of that. And maybe some of them were restrictive or good decisions. I don't know. But I got very focused on dealing with that debt because I felt that it was taking away, to my first point, my freedom, that
Mhm.
I had to make decisions and live about it. I wasn't willing to take certain risks. So I got hyper focused on taking care of that debt. And I set a goal to be, at least with that law school loans, to be gone before I had my first kid. So I think I paid them off in May, and we were talking about both of our kids, our
Yep.
August birthday. So I finished it off like 3 months ahead of time before my daughter was born. And
Kudos.
that's important, right? And that's kind of that, pick a goal, get hyper focused on it, and then you kind of build up pride in what you're doing. So those would be my three things: is that hyper focus on debt if you end up in that situation, redefining what retirement is, learning how to spend, not just save, and then defining what financial freedom is to you.
Jamie, what I love about your top three is that you almost hit on the full life cycle,
Mhm.
right, of dealing with your money. I like to say that you start off and then you're growing your wealth, and then you're trying to protect your wealth, and then you're
Mhm.
distributing your wealth during life, and then you're working to pass it on. Those sort of four phases, and your top three literally touch on all of them because you got to give your money purpose. I like to say that when I sit down with people and we talk about financial planning, I ask them, what's the purpose of every financial asset you have? Right? Like a lot of people don't even have a purpose to their. It's there.
Mhm.
Oh, what is it there for? And then I love your point about test driving the expenditures and saying, okay, this is going to be a whole new chapter, new phase in your life. What does that look like? Maybe test driving it out, and then third, making sure that debt isn't the thing that's crippling you. One of these days, I'll talk about the the financial body concept. I talk about, I think, your financial body, your finances have a body of their own, right? You have a physical body and you have a financial body called a fin bod, and debt can be the cholesterol that hampers a lot of the growth of the financial body. So, um, you've done an awesome job, Jamie, because you pretty much talked about all three of them and how it's helped you. One other question I'll ask you, and then I'll ask you to recap. How do you think all three of these points that you've mentioned, help other folks that you work with on a regular basis?
I think all of these help other people tremendously. We'll go backwards like we did before too, which is and you mentioned it. If we don't have meaning to something, we're less connected with it.
Yeah.
And so defining what your freedom is and your why around your money and your financial future is incredibly important. And there actually is research about this, but being connected to your future self, and we make better decisions around that.
Yeah.
So that's why to me it's such an important place to start, is if we define that, we become connected to it and therefore we follow through on it. It's similar to goal-based planning, but it goes beyond that. It's aspirational. Goals are mile markers along the way, which are helpful, but they're not the big picture item. And then, retirement is just such a core part. I mean, it's probably the one term around like finance that everybody knows.
Mhm.
So, like, I know we're not going to get rid of that term completely, but that becoming work optional, learning how to spend is so important. You get so many people who save and they work so hard through their whole life and they don't live a great retirement because they're so scared to spend, right? They self insure everything. So a big part of that is giving somebody the freedom, right, to actually spend and that they feel okay with it. It's permission. And if you don't do all that work and you don't figure out what it looks like, you don't learn how to spend, you don't give yourself permission to spend, and then you're just kind of hoarding money till you die and leaving it to somebody else to spend, and probably not as well as you would have spent it. And then the other one is, debt. Debt I just worry about, right? Lots of Americans struggle with debt. And it doesn't mean debt's always a bad thing. Like, I'm not an anti-debt person, but I'm an anti-debt controlling your life person. And those are two very different things. And debt's one of those snowball things where all the good things about compounding go against
Go
us
against you.
sometimes
Yeah.
in debt. So
Yeah.
learning those concepts, and it's sad when you see people. I mean, you literally have people that take their own lives, right, based on falling
Yeah.
behind in debt. Like, debt can be truly disruptive, but that can also help you grow your wealth and
Mhm.
go to places you haven't been before. Like, I couldn't pay for law school by myself. Like, I didn't have any money. So that gave me an opportunity to learn something and learn a skill and, increase my long-term earning potential. But I had to take on some risk along with it.
Amen. Amen. So here's the thing. I love to say that whatever motivates you motivates your money. And I think everything about what you represent in this industry, Jamie, is about that, finding the motivation behind the financial decisions that we made. So one last time, brother, can you give us and recap your top three?
Yeah. So my top three is find your financial freedom. That's number one. The number two is learn how to, spend and not just save, right? So when you get to retirement and work does become optional, you actually have that permission to spend your money the way you want to. Then the other one is, right, manage your debt. Don't let that take control of your life and your happiness. So be focused on it if you need to be, but also don't be afraid of it. It can be a positive tool when used correctly. So those are my top three things, and they're all pulled from my own personal experiences, right? These aren't things that I read in a textbook. They're all ones that I've had to live through.
I love it, Jamie. Jamie, thank you so much. To Baxter, to the kiddos, to everyone out there, to the whole Carson family, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, sharing your top three. The financial life journey is a long one. We know that that journey continues. And again, whatever motivates you, motivates your money. Thanks again, Jamie.